The sound of the train's whistle and the sudden slowing of its passage drew James MacFarlane's attention away from the book he was reading and towards the window. The steam from the engine and the apparently ubiquitous low-hanging mist of the Irish countryside meant that his view was mostly obscured. All he could see was a patchwork of drab fields and shallow hills, their summits hidden by low-lying clouds. He presumed that the driver was slowing so that either he or the engineer could scare a herd of sheep or perhaps cows off the line. There had been quite a lot of that during the journey so far. Livestock seemed to be free to wander aimlessly around the countryside in Ireland, as far as he could tell. He had taken the ferry from Holyhead in Wales to the port of Dunleary the day before. Having rapidly taken stock of the port, and indeed taken against it, he had quickly hailed a carriage and relocated the short distance to Dublin, which turned out to be a lively city with many good restaurants, taverns and hotels. He spent a restful night ensconced in crisply starched cotton sheets, and, on waking, he paid his bill, found his way to the station and caught a train to Galway, his ultimate destination, several hours away. The train accelerated, pushing MacFarlane back into his seat. Glancing out of the window again, he caught sight of several woeful-looking sheep standing beside the track and eyeing the train balefully. A gust of steam passed by the window, and several glowing embers of coal drifted into the compartment and settled on his sleeve. He brushed them off casually and settled back to his book, looking up again only when the train stopped at one of the many local stations along its route. Some of the names, like Leixlip, Maynooth and Mullingar, sounded exotic, as if they were abroad rather than within the British Isles. Others, like Hill of Down, Moat and Horseleap, seemed more as if they were describing some small local landmark or notable event. It said something about Ireland, he thought, that a station should be named after a place where a horse had once jumped over something. "What's that you'll be reading there?" a man said from across the compartment. MacFarlane glanced up at him. He was short and broad, wearing a check suit and with a small bowler hat pulled down so tightly on his head that MacFarlane wondered how he would ever get it off. MacFarlane hadn't noticed when the man had boarded the train, nor had he exchanged any words with him since. But apparently the Irish were very direct when it came to talking to strangers. "It's called Monsters and Legends of the British Isles," he said, holding the book up. "It purports to be a comprehensive survey of all the mythical creatures that have been reported across England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland. But it is woefully short on corroborative evidence and references." The man looked at him sceptically. "You'll not be a farmer, then?" "Actually, I'm a journalist, but I've been commissioned by a publisher to write a new book on the subject, which will be serialised in the Times of London." That sounds far too pompous, he thought, and made a note not to say it again unless he had to. "The Times, is it? Well, there's plenty of supernatural creatures to write about around these parts," the man said. "There's leprechauns and pookies and merrows. And of course there's the—" "Actually," MacFarlane interrupted, "I'm more interested in the beast-like creatures. Supernatural black dogs, for instance. Or sea serpents like the—" He hesitated over the word. "The oily feast." The other man looked shrewdly at MacFarlane. "You'll be going to Galway, I'll be bound," he said. "So, it's the Dobhar-chu you'll be interested in, then?" "That is a sea serpent, isn't it?" MacFarlane asked. No, the man said, shaking his head. "The Dobhar-chu isn't a sea serpent. It's more like a giant otter. A mammal, if you will, rather than a reptile. At least, that's what they say." "I shall certainly make a note of that," MacFarlane said politely. "Is there anybody locally who claims to have seen it?" "There's always someone who's seen it, or says they have if you buy them a drink or three," the man said. "The farmers in the area blame any deaths of their sheep, or their cows, or the horses on the Dobhar-chu, even though it's more likely that it was wolves who did it. To be fair, there do seem to be more animal deaths around Connemara than anywhere else I've visited, and mutilations of the poor beasts too." "I thought I read somewhere that the last wolf in Ireland died over 100 years ago," MacFarlane observed. The man raised an eyebrow. "You'll be an expert on the wildlife of this fair isle, then?"